We all know that people can be inconsiderate, but Melissa's neighbors really take the cake. When she saw the boulder in her driveway for the umpteenth time, she grew absolutely livid. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. She had moved from Kansas City to California to study, not to get blocked in her own driveway on an almost daily basis. But unluckily for her neighbors, Melissa was also a Ph.D. geology student, and the whole neighborhood was about to learn why you should never mess with a geologist. Melissa was all too familiar with neighbor problems. While working hard at attaining her third degree, she had shared her space with inconsiderate roommates and neighbors before. At the time, she and her roommates had lived in the same building for 3 years, so she was, understandably, concerned when a group of new neighbors, who were first and second year undergraduates, moved in. At first, she was pleasantly surprised, but then they blocked her driveway. Each year, when Melissa and her roommates renewed their leases, everyone, especially Melissa, was relieved to know that the others were still willing to keep their unique dynamic going. Melissa commented on the situation, writing that she and her roommates had already been together for 3 years. She was initially worried when a group of undergrads moved into the building, but was pleasantly surprised. Everything seemed to be going well. Little did she know, all hell was about to break loose. Usually, undergraduate students are known to host bigger and wilder parties than graduate students. This is thought to be due to the fact that older students are used to the freedom they are afforded during college and have gotten it out of their systems. Although Melissa did admit that they've generally been pretty considerate with noise and keeping people out of our yard, when she saw the boulder, she saw red. So why was Melissa so angry? Well, she had specifically approached her new neighbors and asked them politely to refrain from blocking her driveway when she saw that they were having a party. "I went over to ask that people stay out of our backyard," she wrote, "and noticed that a car was blocking us in. So I asked that it be moved by 7 a.m. and left a note. When she woke up the next morning, the car had been moved, but in its place was a massive boulder. Usually, Melissa enjoys quiet and solitude. Unfortunately, Melissa also happens to share her neighborhood with a large number of rowdy students. But generally speaking, she has managed to lead a quiet and studious life, for the most part. But there was a rocky road for her and her rude neighbors just ahead, literally. Before the incident, Melissa had gone to her car early one morning to find that it had been blocked by an enormous boulder. But this wasn't just any old boulder. It had a very specific purpose. It seemed as though one of the neighbors had decided that the rock was getting in his way, so he moved it over to Melissa's side of the fence, right in front of her tire. Annoyed, she knocked on the door to get help moving it back, but there was no answer. In all that heyday, they were worried about their fence getting stuck in the middle of the commotion. So the rock had been purposely put nearby the fence to protect it from the dangers of irresponsible drivers, or simply just bad parkers. That was all fine and well, but when it needed to be moved, it seems Melissa's request was all but forgotten. When one of Melissa's neighbors needed to move their car and the rock was in their way, they just decided to inconsiderately move it anywhere else, without thinking about exactly where it was landing. He moved it to Melissa's side of the fence, ignoring the fact that another car was there, specifically the car of the person who had nicely asked not to be blocked in. The giant rock was effectively blocking her car from backing out of the driveway. Melissa got help to put the rock back in the proper place, but the whole situation would soon go from careless and inconsiderate to downright intolerable. Her rude neighbors had a crazy party one night, and she had gone over to ask them to make sure no cars would be blocking her driveway in the morning so she could leave for work. But when she woke up and went to her car, there was the boulder. This time, Melissa knew that the giant rock had definitely ended up there on purpose. She knew that if she moved the boulder back to where it was supposed to be, it would eventually end up on her side of the fence again. It turns out that Melissa's neighbors had seriously underestimated her. But what they had failed to remember was that Melissa was, in fact, a geologist. And that means she had access to a professional auto chipper, which had the power to drill through stone and pulverize it in a matter of minutes. So she hauled out her extremely loud stone drilling machine at 7:30 a.m., cranked it up to the highest setting, and proceeded to obliterate the pesky boulder into a pile of rubble. Before long, that pesky boulder was just a pile of rubble, which she kindly swept over to her neighbors. Despite the size of it, Melissa successfully chipped away at it, and she did it with a satisfying smile. She shared her updates on the story via Twitter, and her tweet was shared over 10,000 times by the next morning and liked by more than 50,000 tweeters. It seemed her gratifying post was more relatable than she thought. Melissa is incredibly intelligent and knew that if she was going to cause so much noise, had to do it within acceptable hours. As the noise ordinance stops at 7 a.m., she started at 7:30 and worked on the boulder for 4 hours. Melissa could now sit up and relax while taking pride in her handiwork. Her pranksters probably didn't think it would turn out like this for them, so after a job well done, we can only imagine how silly her neighbors must have felt, who, after all, brought this upon themselves. After Melissa destroyed the boulder and gave the boys an early morning wake-up call, she sat down to enjoy a cup of tea. However, what made things even sweeter was the fact that she was able to kick back and know that these rowdy students were going to think twice from now on. Considering that this was the second time that Melissa's car had been blocked in, she was happy to see that her neighbors might have finally gotten the hint. Knowing that this was a unique story, Melissa decided to do a live feed on her Twitter account about the entire thing. One thing was for sure, Melissa's story was about to cause some serious buzz online, and thousands of people were curious as to why the students decided to block her car in the first place. The praise Melissa received was unreal. "The only part I'm disappointed with is that you weren't doing this at 5 a.m., one person wrote. Melissa wasn't expecting this response when she had originally posted the story. She didn't know that people would find it so funny, but the attention she received was overwhelming. She commented on how she had gained hundreds of followers since the story spread and hopes that she can serve as a role model for young girls to become scientists.